chatter.
Fight!
Dune has become the epic movie trilogy of this generation, joining the ranks of Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. With the release of Dune Part 2, the importance and sheer magnitude of this movie trilogy is reflected by its critical acclaim, audience reaction to the amazing visuals, likable characters, and gripping story and screenplay at a time when Hollywood is putting out some of the worst movies it has ever made. It's refreshing to say the least. Just like Part 1, Dune Part 2 is considered by many to be a masterpiece in storytelling and filmmaking. For me, Dune is the best movie trilogy ever made, and we're going to deep dive into the second part of this epic saga.
Consider what you're about to do, Paul Atreides.
Silence!
Hey everyone, welcome back to Poprageous. I'm Danny Alex. I'm an award-winning screenwriter here in Los Angeles and review movies by assessing the screenplay as well as the various production elements. At the end of my review, I'll give you my score out of 10, so stick around. Dune Part 1 and Part 2 was directed and co-written by Denis Villeneuve, whose mastering the art of storytelling through the camera lens is on full display. He's one of the few writer-directors who understands how to tell a story using the visual arts, and he does so at the highest level. He knows how to construct a compelling screenplay with story elements that captures the audience's imagination through well-crafted emotional payoffs, character conflicts, and intense, and I mean intense, world building with no detail being too small to fuss over. The first thing that I have to mention about this movie is the incredible sound and music compositions that make every scene jump off the screen, making you feel as though you're inside the movie. It's created by none other than Hans Zimmer, known for amazing films such as Gladiator, Blade Runner 2049, and Inception, to name only a few. Sound and music scores have become a part of what defines Denis Villeneuve's work, with Dune Part 2 being a shoo-in for one of the many categories that this movie will be nominated for in the 2025 Academy Awards, and rightfully so. The music is less melody and more of a mix of individual chords that are interlaced with conflicting notes that takes your auditory senses on a ride with what you are seeing on screen. It's a powerful combination that sets the tone and ignites an amazing movie experience as the combined audio and visuals wrap you up and making you feel as though you're actually part of the movie. This is a movie that has to be seen on the big screen. It is literally money well spent. The casting is incredibly well thought out, with Rebecca Ferguson being a complete standout as Lady Jessica, the Bene Gesserit mother of Paul Atreides. Her ability to act out intense emotional scenes using facial expressions with extreme close-ups adds a layer to her character that she is 100% responsible for. Timothée Chalamet's performance as Paul Atreides is once again on the money, as he finds a perfect balance to give his character depth, sympathy, and likability. Zendaya is much the same, and the two together create a rare mix that combines to give on-screen chemistry that is rarely seen in movies today. And you have to mention Austin Butler, who is also a standout playing the role of Feyd-Rautha. He nailed it convincingly and injected an intensity that magnified the payoff in the final act when Paul Atreides and he face off in one-on-one combat. The only casting choice that I wasn't actually very big on was Christopher Walken, and I am a huge fan of his work. It was one of the casting choices that just didn't feel right to me. It felt slightly off. And I love almost all of the roles that he's played over the past 6 decades. But in the role of Emperor, it felt flat, as though he didn't fit everything that role needed to come off as convincing. It wasn't particularly a wrong choice, but it could have been cast with an actor that more closely embodied that role. At least that's what I felt. It is impossible to discuss Dune Part 2 without shining a huge spotlight on the awe-inspiring cinematography. This movie is a masterclass in understanding the camera frame and how it will translate as part of a larger story on screen. This is an undeniable gift that Denis Villeneuve has, along with Greg Fraser, who is easily one of the most sought-after cinematographers in all of the Hollywood today. Together, they have created a visual masterpiece that will become one of the greatest trilogies in all of film, and perhaps the greatest ever. In my opinion, Dune has usurped the #1 position as the best trilogy ever created, with still one more to come, Part 3, with Lord of the Rings and Star Wars in that order. Now, the costumes and the set design also has to be recognized as an amazing achievement and given their own space in any review, as they give this movie an epic and believable feel that sets the tone and gives believability to the story. I have always said that great filmmaking should feel as though that there is like a secret camera that is hiding in a world that is capturing images as real-time events unfold. Denis Villeneuve makes you feel as though the world of Dune is a real place and that he ventured off to some far-off galaxy with an invisible camera and literally filmed it. That's what a great movie makes you feel, and that is exactly what Dune Part 2 feels like. Everything in Dune Part 2 comes across as authentic and is a testament to all of the people who worked to create this film, from sets, costumes, cinematography, and story structure. The screenplay is beautifully written, with each character finding their own space and meaning to exist within the story. Paul Atreides is again a well-written protagonist with well-thought-out internal and external conflicts that combine to create a believable and sympathetic hero. We care for who he is and what happens to him, and most important, we believe that he could be the hero that he is. He has self-doubt, and the layers to his character intertwine effortlessly through to the supporting characters, each bringing conflict and tension to the story. Dune Part 2 actually scales the main conflict by utilizing multiple antagonists, elevating the threat level to Paul Atreides and the Fremen midway into the movie. The movie begins where the first movie left off, with Baron Harkonnen and Beast Rabban as the main adversaries. But halfway through, Feyd-Rautha is introduced, usurping Beast Rabban as the main threat to Paul Atreides, elevating the entire story to a new level, and with it, new stakes and increasing intensity in the final conflict. It's similar to how Christopher Nolan wrote The Dark Knight, which was the only good movie of that trilogy in my honest opinion. The Joker tested Batman with an ever-increasing level of stakes throughout the movie. A similar idea Denis Villeneuve and his writing team created in Dune Part 2, with Beast Rabban, Baron Harkonnen, Feyd-Rautha, and the eventual showdown with the Emperor and Ben the Bene Gesserit. There are a lot of moving parts to this movie, with characters, families, and factions each having their own motivations. The script does an amazing job balancing each within the story, generating conflict and mystery for the audience. Another ingredient that is perfectly executed is the dialogue. Denis Villeneuve understands how dialogue works and how it should harmonize with the visual aspects of the movie. It did exactly what it needed to do: help tell the visual story. There is no unnecessary banter, pretentious narratives, or bouts of exposition that try to tell the audience some of the more challenging elements to the story. Denis Villeneuve finds ways to visually tell the story, which is what any great movie will do at an extremely elevated level. Show, don't tell. There are so many good things you could get into when discussing Dune Part 2, but if I had to find things in the screenplay that could have been done maybe a little better, there are a couple of technical elements in the screenplay that I could mention. There's a narrative principle to storytelling called Chekhov's gun. I mean, you can Google it to learn exactly what it is. And there are two specific plot points in the movie that should have been introduced or teased upon earlier before they appeared. The first was when Gurney Halleck was introduced back into the story as a spice smuggler. It kind of came from out of nowhere, and it should have been teased earlier on. It could easily have been handled by Chaney briefly mentioning that it's not just only the Harkonnens that they have to deal with, but also spice smugglers who have become more aggressive in harvesting spice. This would have reintroduced Gurney Halleck in a more natural and logical way. The same could be said for the nuclear arsenal, which seems to conveniently come out of nowhere. I would have briefly mentioned its existence, and again, it could have been a single line in the conversation with Paul Atreides and Stilgar, or even Chaney. It would give credibility to the scene when they are introduced and not feel as though it was a convenient plot device. I also want to mention the incredible job Stellan Skarsgård did as Baron Harkonnen. He spent 6 hours a day getting into makeup, and it was just another example of ideal casting and amazing costumes and makeup. There are so many things that I could get into with Dune Part 2, but just like its predecessor, it is as close to being a masterpiece as can be. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm giving Dune Part 2 a score of 9.5. And for me, a 10 doesn't exist on my scale, as perfection is something we all strive for, but is impossible to achieve. Dune Part 2 is as close as it comes. If you like what you heard, I thank you for watching, and if you didn't like it, well, I thank you all the same, and I will see you in our next video.